Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cipher Brief Digital Studio. I'm editor-writer Ethan Masupal. Today, we're going to be looking at Taiwan and China again, another global hotspot that we look at here at the Cipher Brief. And joining me today is Ava Shen. She's an associate for China and Northeast Asia at the Eurasia Group. Ava, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, of course, Ethan. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Ava, I just want to start off. Recently, China held another round of military drills around Taiwan. And these kinds of exercises, of course, are not necessarily a surprise, nothing new, so to speak. But can you put the recent drills into context of how they pair with other exercises in the past?
Yes, of course. So I think the military exercises that just occurred on the 1st and 2nd of April is a slightly larger comparing to the exercises that occurred since last November. So the exercises I'm talking about are the ones that occurred in December, February, and March. And so this exercise, something that is particular is that it included live firing exercises, and those haven't been occurring for over a year. And so this is significant because this shows how angry China is toward the current cross-strait policy stance that the Taiwan President William Lai is adopting. And so what are the recent drills in response to? So what we think is that the drills are in response to President William Lai's speech on March 13th, in which he identified China as a foreign hostile force. And this language in particular is very provocative to China. And this is the first time that any Taiwanese leader has used this language to describe China. And in that speech, Lai also laid out 17 measures in which he is going to counter Chinese infiltration efforts within Taiwanese society. And so that entails scrutinizing cross-strait exchanges and trying to be stricter in terms of identifying the documentations of Chinese residents who are currently in Taiwan. And so Beijing views all of these efforts as trying to cut cultural and family ties across the strait. And that obviously is interpreted by Beijing as an additional effort to trying to advance this idea of Taiwanese sovereignty, this idea of Taiwanese independence, which is a Chinese red line. And so something that's also particular about the exercises that occurred in early April is that the domestic propaganda efforts were huge. So after the speech that Lai made came out, there were 18 commentaries that China issued across different Chinese official media outlets across in the 3 days after the speech was made. And during the exercises that were occurring, there were a lot of live footages that were shown in domestic media about, how the planes are flying over and what kind of activities that the Chinese military is conducting. And the Eastern Combat Theater has also issued several videos of the actions that they're taking and showing kind of the capabilities of the Chinese military. And they also have even issued political cartoons portraying William Lai as a parasite that is poisoning cross-strait relations, which is very extreme. So I think these are just some of the characteristics of the most recent exercises.
The future of national security is here. Introducing the Cipher Brief's NatSec Edge Conference, June 5th through 6th, 2025 in Austin, Texas. Join leaders from intelligence, defense, private industry, and investment as they explore the innovations shaping tomorrow's world. Gain critical insights, connect with top minds, and shape the future of security in an interconnected world. Don't just witness the future, be a part of it. Secure your spot now at natsekedge.com.
Going over to sort of the U.S. position in all of this, you can disagree with me if you'd like, but it seems to be there's been some mixed signals from the current administration on its approach to Taiwan. There's everything from the recent tariffs, which, sort of put some space between Taipei and Washington. And then there's also the report from the Washington Post of that secret Pentagon memo just reiterating the military priority to deter a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. So, what are you seeing from this administration on its strategy towards Taiwan?
Yeah, so I think on the security front, there's actually a lot of policy continuity between the previous Biden administration and the current Trump administration. And of course, there is the tariff bit where Taiwan is also hit by tariffs, but I tend to look at the security side separate from the economic side. So on the security side, what have we seen since this Trump administration has come into office? In February, there were a lot of different moves of the U.S. showing support for Taiwan. So there was the first naval transit across the Taiwan Strait of the U.S. 7 fleet in the Navy. That happened in mid-February, and that was the first time that this happened under Trump's second term. And also there were a bunch of joint statements with U.S. allies in the region, such as the U.S.-Japan joint statement and also the U.S.-South Korea-Japan trilateral meeting during the Munich Security Conference that both of them said that, reiterated the importance of cross-strait stability. And they also said that these countries would support Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations. And those two things are consistent with what the Biden administration has been doing, which is trying to raise international awareness for Taiwan and trying to coordinate with its allies to try to, have that deterrence across the Taiwan Strait. And there's also the recent visit of U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to Japan and the Philippines at the end of March. And so during these visits in Japan, Pete Hegseth reiterated that the U.S. is going to be imposing, enduring, credible deterrence across the Taiwan Strait. And also he also called China's actions aggressive, right? And in the Philippines, he met with the Joint Army Chief there, and the Joint Army Chief said, which is actually reported in Taiwanese media, he said that the Philippines would be inevitably involved if there was an invasion of Taiwan. And so you can clearly see that when the U.S. is talking to regional allies, Taiwan is always part of the conversation. And in terms of sort of military asset movements within the region, I think the U.S. is actually considering deploying an additional Typhoon missiles to the Philippines. And there are also reports that Japan is considering deploying missiles to the southern Kyushu Island. So that's the southmost a region of Japan. And so both of these would actually put coastal China within reach. And so you can see that I think these movements reflect the leaked internal Pentagon memo that you mentioned, that the U.S. military's priority is definitely still the eyes of the U.S. military are set on China. And so on the security side, I think it is safe to say that the support for Taiwan is definitely still there. And just to go back to the recent military exercises that China conducted, in response, the U.S. did issue a statement of concern. So did Canada, the UK, and Japan. And there was also a joint G7 foreign minister statement calling out China's actions and trying to express concerns for a cross-strait peace. Right. And so on the economic side, it is clear that Taiwan has been hit with these sanctions, but Taiwan has reached out for talks, and I think Taiwan is one of the countries that is benefiting from the 90-minute pause of the tariff increase. And right now, U.S. tariffs against Taiwan is, I think, at an additional 10%. And I think the latest report on that is, today, actually, the U.S. Trade Representative Office is going to start kind of trade talks with Taiwan to try to figure this out. And Taiwan's approach to all of this is trying to basically show as much goodwill as it can to the U.S. And the priorities of the current Biden administration is that we're going to improve ties with the U.S., whether it be defense or economic or other international support, because President Lai in Taiwan sees that the threat from China is increasing, not decreasing.
Right. A couple points there. So it's a good reminder from what you said, of the U.S. sort of relying on its Indo-Pacific allies in its strategy towards Taiwan and China. A bit reassuring considering what we see with the transatlantic relationships.
Yes.
Um, and then you mentioned sort of Taiwan's response to all of this is, as you said, expressing goodwill, um, not, for example, retaliating against those reciprocal tariffs when they were first announced. Can you talk about what Taiwan is looking for from the U.S.? And I leave that open to you, whether it's movement on the backlog of, weapon sales, or what else do you think Taipei is looking for from Washington?
I think first and foremost, the U.S. is the largest security guarantor for Taiwan. And so I think for the current Lai administration, the absolute priority is to strengthen ties with the U.S. in all aspects that it can. And so the biggest item is obviously defense and security. And so I think the U.S. backlog of weapons, namely that the weapons that Taiwan has paid for, but the U.S. hasn't delivered. I think these are definitely a long-term concern for Taiwan, and so trying to have the U.S. have movement on that is obviously top of mind for Taipei. And so I think the recent development in that is there was the handover of F-16V fighter jets from the U.S. to Taiwan, and during the handover ceremony, the deputy defense minister of Taiwan actually came to the factory in South Carolina to oversee that ceremony and that handover. And obviously, that visit was very low key, but you can tell that in terms of the interactions between Taiwanese and U.S. officials, like that's very much ongoing. And another part is what we call the special channel talks that are still continuing. The Financial Times reported on April 4th that those talks occurred in Washington, D.C. And the special channel is used for the U.S. and Taiwanese officials to discuss any security-related issues. And so this channel is the first time that it's been used under the current Trump administration. And so we can see that's another data point of how the U.S. and Taiwan are continuing to engage on the security side. And I think what Taiwan wants to see is that they want Trump to be obviously more vocal about the support for Taiwan, because if we look at the Biden administration, Biden during his time, he said at 4 separate points verbally that if Taiwan is invaded by China, then the U.S. would have to defend it. And so that kind of verbal assurance is very good for Taiwan. So I think if Trump could say something like that, Taiwan would be definitely very happy. But I guess the challenge there is that I think Trump personally doesn't really care about Taiwan one way or the other, and it's more about the people who surround him that have more sort of vested interest in seeing Taiwan, preserving its current way of life. And so on the economic side, I think in face of the current tariffs, President Lai, he wrote an op-ed in Bloomberg, I think yesterday or a day or two ago, that basically said we are seeking talks with the U.S. and trying to basically have a free trade agreement in place. So trying to have that reciprocal zero tariff arrangement with the U.S. and that op-ed as well, he also pledged increasing investments into the U.S. By Taiwanese companies. I think the most prominent example of that is the additional $100 billion investment that was promised by Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. That's I think the largest single kind of FDI by dollar amount that's invested into the U.S. period in history. So you can see the amount of commitment that TSMC is vested into the U.S. And I think there are also reported sort of rumors that TSMC might take a stake in Intel. to try to help with their chip manufacturing business. And there's also a rumored merger between U.S. firm Global Foundries and with I think it's United Microelectronic Corporation, UMC. So that's another example of Taiwanese businesses trying to deepen investment ties in the U.S. And so, so I think like big picture wise, the Taiwan strategy is definitely trying to bind itself closer to the U.S.
Well, Ava, any final thoughts? What you're going to be looking for in terms of Taiwan, China, and the U.S. in the next few months?
Yeah, so I think the next major watch point we have is October 10th. I think William Lai will likely make a speech on that day, on Taiwan's National Day, to talk about domestic political developments, but also his cross-strait policy. So China will be watching closely in terms of what he says. And a potential may or may not watch point is on May 20th this year, because this will be the first full year that Lai is in office, and given how much Beijing is displeased with Lai and his cross-strait stance, I think there might be some actions around there too. That's something that the Taiwanese government is worried about. And I think looking ahead to 2026, we have local elections in Taiwan, in which cross-strait dynamics might come up again as something that the DPP can play against to weaken the KMT, given the polarized political landscape in Taiwan.
Right. We will also be looking at those watch points too. Ava, thank you so much for joining us here at the Cipher Brief. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for inviting me.